Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now without wasting any time, let's start today's true off-the-chest Reddit story while playing Minecraft in background. I never thought I'd be the guy posting something like this on the internet, but honestly, keeping this bottled up inside my own head for the last 5 years has started to feel like a slow-burning poison. When you're 19 years old, you think you're invincible, you think you're an adult, and most of all, you think you're smart enough to handle things that are way out of your league. But looking back at everything that happened during my sophomore year at Oak Ridge University, I realized I was just an easy target for someone who knew exactly how to play the system and exactly how to play me. If you had told me at the start of that semester that a single office hours visit would end up dismantling my entire life, costing me my education, and pushing me into a psychological thriller I couldn't escape, I would have laughed in your face. It all started back in the fall of 2021, when I was taking an advanced literature and creative writing seminar. It was a required course for my major, but it was notoriously difficult because it was taught by Dr. Victoria Vance. Victoria was 29 at the time, which made her incredibly young for a tenure-track professor at Oak Ridge, and she had this reputation around campus for being absolutely brilliant, but incredibly cold. She wasn't the type of teacher who smiled when you walked into the lecture hall, and she certainly didn't hand out easy grades just to be liked by her students. She was stunning in a very sharp, intimidating way, always wearing tailored blazers, dark slacks, and these thin-rimmed glasses that made her feel like she was looking right through you. Most of the guys in my dorm joked about having crushes on her, but it was always from a safe distance because nobody actually had the guts to talk to her about anything outside of the syllabus. I was struggling heavily in her class during the first month, mostly because her grading criteria felt completely impossible to meet. I had always been an A student in high school, so getting a C- on my first major analysis paper felt like a massive slap in the face. I remember sitting in my cramped dorm room, staring at the red ink bleeding across the margins of my printout, feeling a mix of genuine panic and frustration. My scholarship depended on maintaining a certain GPA, and if I failed her class, or even if I just walked away with a C, my financial aid was going to be in serious jeopardy. That was the exact moment I made the decision to schedule an appointment during her office hours, thinking I would just get some standard advice on how to improve my thesis statements. I had no idea I was walking straight into a trap that had been carefully laid out before I even stepped through the door. Her office was located at the very end of a long, dimly lit hallway on the 3rd floor of the Humanities building, a place that always smelled like old paper and floor wax. When I knocked on the heavy oak door that Tuesday afternoon, my hands were actually shaking a little bit. I heard her calm, clear voice tell me to come in, and when I pushed the door open, she was sitting behind a massive desk cluttered with leather-bound books and stacks of ungraded papers. The afternoon sun was cutting through the blinds, casting these long shadows across the room, and she didn't look up immediately. She just finished writing a note in a margin, capped her fountain pen with a deliberate click, and then looked up at me, taking off her glasses and resting them on the desk. Liam, come in, she said, and her voice sounded completely different than it did when she was lecturing a room of 60 students. It was softer, more personal, and it caught me off guard because I didn't think she even knew my name without looking at a seating chart. I was wondering when you'd come by to talk about your paper. Please, have a seat. I sat down in the leather chair across from her, clutching my binder like it was a shield, and tried to explain that I was worried about my grade and my scholarship. I rambled for a good 2 minutes, probably sounding incredibly desperate, explaining how hard I had worked on that essay and how I just couldn't seem to figure out what she was looking for. Victoria didn't interrupt me once. She just sat back, leaning her chin on her hand, watching me with these intense dark eyes that made me feel completely exposed. When I finally ran out of breath and stopped talking, she let out a small, almost sympathetic sigh that completely shattered the cold professor persona I had grown used to. Liam, you're a very talented writer, but you're holding back, she said, leaning forward and pulling my paper toward her. The problem isn't your thesis statements or your structure. The problem is that you're writing what you think I want to hear rather than what you actually think. You have a very unique voice, but you're burying it under academic jargon because you're afraid of being vulnerable on the page. Hearing those words from someone I respected so much felt like a sudden rush of validation. It wasn't just a critique. It felt like she genuinely understood me in a way that none of my other professors did. We ended up talking for nearly an hour, completely losing track of time as she went through my paper line by line, showing me where my writing showed real promise. But as the conversation went on, the topics started to shift away from the coursework. She started asking me about my background, why I chose Oak Ridge, and what my life was like outside of classes. It felt completely natural at the time, just a mentor taking a genuine interest in a struggling student. But looking back, I can see how she was subtly mapping out my vulnerabilities. It must be hard being so far away from home, she murmured, looking at me with a look that felt dangerously close to affection, and dealing with the pressure of keeping a scholarship on top of everything else. It's a lot for someone your age to carry alone. Yeah, it gets pretty overwhelming sometimes, I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck. My parents don't really understand how college works, so I don't really have anyone to talk to about this stuff. I just feel like I'm constantly one mistake away from losing everything. Victoria smiled, a small, private smile that felt like a secret shared just between the two of us. Well, you don't have to carry it completely alone anymore, Liam. My door is always open for you. If you ever need a quiet place to work, or just someone to talk to who understands the pressure, you're always welcome here. Let's make this a weekly thing, okay? Let's get that grade up to where it belongs. I walked out of her office that day feeling like I was walking on air. The anxiety that had been crushing my chest for weeks was completely gone, replaced by this intense wave of gratitude and admiration for Dr. Vance. I told myself that I was just incredibly lucky to have found a professor who actually cared about my success. And for the next 3 weeks, our weekly meetings became the absolute highlight of my calendar. Every Tuesday afternoon, I would walk up to that third-floor office, and every week, the boundary between professor and student became a little more blurred. Our discussions about literature quickly turned into deep, highly personal conversations about our lives. I found myself telling her secrets I hadn't even shared with my closest friends from back home, talking about my childhood, my deepest anxieties, and my failed high school relationships. In return, Victoria started dropping hints about her own personal life, painting a picture of herself as a deeply lonely, misunderstood woman who was trapped in a cold, sterile academic world. She told me about her bitter divorce from a couple of years ago, how isolating it was to move to a new town where she had no real friends, and how the university administration was constantly breathing down her neck. She made me feel like we were two kindred spirits, both of us isolated and struggling against systems that didn't care about us. The real turning point happened during the first week of November. A massive rainstorm had hit the campus, turning the afternoon sky a dark, bruised purple and flooding the walkways. By the time our scheduled meeting rolled around at 5 o'clock, the humanities building was practically deserted. Most students had rushed back to their dorms to escape the downpour, and the hallways were completely silent except for the sound of rain drumming heavily against the glass windows. When I walked into Victoria's office, she wasn't wearing her blazer or her glasses. She was wearing a soft, oversized sweater, sitting on the small fabric couch she kept in the corner of her office instead of behind her desk. "You're soaked, Liam," she said, standing up immediately and grabbing a clean towel from her small personal bathroom. She walked over to me and started gently drying my hair and shoulders, her hands lingering just a bit too long on my collarbone. The proximity was intoxicating, and I could smell her perfume, something expensive that smelled like vanilla and dark wood. "You should have canceled. You're going to catch a cold walking around in this weather." "I didn't want to miss our meeting," I said, my voice coming out much lower than I intended. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribs I was terrified she would hear it. She stopped moving the towel, her hand resting against the side of my neck, her thumb brushing lightly against my jawline. She looked up at me, her eyes completely dark, and for a long, agonizing moment, neither of us said a word. The silence in that room was absolute, heavy with an underlying tension that had been building up for 2 months. "Liam, you know this is wrong, don't you?" she whispered, though she didn't pull her hand away. In fact, she moved a step closer, closing the remaining distance between us until I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. "I don't care," I said, and before I could even process what I was doing, I leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a tentative, hesitant kiss. It was desperate and intense, fueled by weeks of suppressed tension and a dangerous, illicit thrill. Victoria didn't pull away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around my neck, pulling me closer against her as she kissed me back with an intensity that completely overwhelmed me. In that exact moment, any remaining common sense I had completely vanished. I wasn't thinking about university policies, I wasn't thinking about the ethics of a professor dating a student, and I certainly wasn't thinking about the consequences. I was 19, and a beautiful, brilliant woman who held all the power in my academic world was treating me like I was the most important person in her universe. When we finally broke apart, she was breathless. Her cheeks flushed as she looked toward the locked office door and then back at me. "We can't do this here, Liam. It's too dangerous. Someone could walk by, even this late." She reached into her bag, pulled out a small piece of paper, and quickly scribbled an address on it before slipping it into my jacket pocket. "Come to my house tonight, around 8. Don't let anyone see you leave the dorms, and please, don't say a word about this to your friends. If anyone finds out, both of our lives will be completely ruined." I nodded quickly, numb with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. I left the building through the side exit, running back to my dorm through the pouring rain, my mind absolutely racing. When I got back to my room, my roommate, a guy named Marcus, was playing video games with his headset on. He asked me why I looked so flushed and wet, and I just lied, telling him I had to sprint back from the library to save my laptop from the rain. Slipping that piece of paper out of my pocket, I stared at her neat, elegant handwriting. It was an address for a small, secluded house about 2 miles off campus, in an older, quiet neighborhood where mostly faculty members and retired professors lived. That night, around 7:45, I pulled my hoodie over my head and walked out of the dorms into the chilly autumn air. I didn't take the bus because I was paranoid about running into someone from my classes, so I walked the entire 2 miles, constantly looking over my shoulder, feeling like a criminal in a movie. The house was a charming, slightly overgrown craftsman bungalow tucked away behind a thick row of pine trees. The porch light was turned off, but I could see a soft, warm glow coming from behind the heavy living room curtains. My heart was in my throat as I walked up the wooden steps and knocked quietly on the front door. Victoria opened it almost instantly, as if she had been standing right behind it waiting for me. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair down around her shoulders, looking completely different from the rigid academic figure who stood at the front of the lecture hall every Monday morning. She grabbed my hand, pulled me inside into the warm, dimly lit hallway, and locked the deadbolt behind me with a sharp, final click. "You made it," she breathed, looking up at me with a soft smile that completely disarmed whatever lingering nerves I had left. "I was worried you'd change your mind." "I couldn't," I said honestly, looking around the living room. It was beautiful, filled with built-in bookshelves overflowing with novels, a vinyl record player softly playing a jazz track in the corner, and a bottle of expensive red wine already open on the coffee table. It felt like an entirely different world, miles away from the cheap plastic furniture of my dorm and the stressful pressure of my student life. That night was the beginning of what I can only describe as a total, intoxicating freefall. We drank wine, we talked for hours on her velvet couch, and eventually, we ended up in her bedroom. For the first few weeks, everything felt absolutely perfect, like a beautiful secret that only belonged to us. I felt like I had been elevated above my peers, like I was living a sophisticated, secret double life that made the mundane reality of quizzes and cafeteria food seem completely trivial. Victoria was incredibly attentive, constantly showering me with praise, telling me how mature I was compared to the other kids my age, and making me feel like I was the center of her world. But it didn't take long for the first cracks to appear in the fantasy, and when they did, they appeared so subtly that I didn't even recognize them as warnings. It started with small commands disguised as affectionate requests. During our third night at her house, she asked me to hand over my phone while we were hanging out, suggesting that we should both disconnect from the outside world so we could focus entirely on each other. It sounded romantic at the time, so I didn't think twice about it. But then it became a strict rule. The moment I walked through her front door, my phone had to be turned off and placed in a ceramic bowl by the entryway. If I received a text from Marcus or my mom while I was over, she would visibly stiffen, her mood instantly turning cold and distant until I apologized and reassured her that she was my main priority. Then came the rules about my social life. One afternoon, I was sitting in the campus coffee shop with a couple of girls from my literature class, working on a group presentation. We were laughing about something stupid our professor had said. Just normal, harmless student interaction. I didn't know it at the time, but Victoria had walked past the shop window and seen us. That night, when I arrived at her house, she wouldn't let me inside right away. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, looking at me with an icy glare that made my stomach drop. "Who were those girls you were with today, Liam?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Oh, just Qley and Sarah from class," I said, caught completely off guard. "We're working on the presentation for our midterms." "What? You looked awfully comfortable with them," she said, stepping back to let me into the house, but refusing to look at me. Laughter, touching. It looked like a lot more than just academic collaboration. "I thought you told me you were fully committed to this relationship. I thought you understood how much I'm risking for you." "I am committed, Victoria, I swear," I said, instantly panicking, desperate to fix whatever I had broken. "It's just a school project. I don't care about them at all. They're just classmates. If you care about me, and if you care about keeping what we have safe, you'll limit your interactions with them," she said, turning around to face me, her eyes suddenly wide and welling with tears. It was a terrifying transformation from anger to intense vulnerability. "You have no idea what they would do if they found out about us, Liam. They would destroy me. They would take my career, my reputation, everything. If you really love me, you won't put me in that kind of danger just to hang out with immature little girls." Seeing her cry completely broke me, and I felt this massive wave of guilt wash over me. I wrapped my arms around her, apologizing profusely, promising that I would change my group, that I wouldn't talk to anyone else, and that I would do whatever it took to keep her safe. I felt like a protector, an adult handling a serious crisis, but in reality, she was systematically cutting off my support system, ensuring that I had absolutely nobody to turn to except for her. Over the next month, the isolation became absolute. I stopped hanging out in the dorm common rooms. I made excuses whenever Marcus invited me to get pizza or go to campus parties, and I barely called my parents anymore, because every phone call felt like an interrogation from Victoria afterward. My entire existence shrunk down to two locations: my dorm room, where I slept, and Victoria's house, where I spent every free hour of my day. I was constantly exhausted, running on empty, trying to maintain the grade she expected of me while managing her increasingly volatile emotional swings. By the time midterms arrived in mid-December, the power dynamic in our relationship had completely shifted. I wasn't her partner, I was her possession. She started tracking my schedule with terrifying precision, knowing exactly what time my classes ended and how long it should take me to walk from the science hall to her house. If I was even 10 minutes late because I stopped to talk to a professor or buy a bottle of water, I would walk into an absolute war zone. She would accuse me of cheating on her, of being ungrateful, or of actively trying to get her fired by acting suspiciously on campus. I remember one specific night vividly, right before winter break. I had stayed at the campus library until 8:30 in the evening to finish a research paper for my history class. I had left my phone in my dorm room by accident, so I hadn't seen the 20 missed calls and 30 frantic text messages she had sent me. When I finally walked up her porch steps and unlocked the door with the spare key she had given me, the house was completely dark. The only light came from the kitchen, where Victoria was sitting at the table, a half-empty bottle of vodka sitting in front of her. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "I was at the library, Victoria, I swear," I said, my heart sinking into my shoes. "I forgot my phone in my room. I was just trying to finish my history paper before the deadline tomorrow." She didn't say a word. She just stood up, walked over to her laptop, which was open on the kitchen counter, and turned it toward me. My jaw went completely slack as I stared at the screen. It was a digital log of my student ID card swipes, showing exactly when I had entered the library, when I had left, and even what turnstile I had used. My blood ran cold. "How? How do you have access to this?" I whispered, looking from the screen back to her face. Victoria let out a short, chilling laugh, taking a slow sip from her glass. "Liam, I'm a senior faculty member who serves on the Student Affairs Committee. Did you really think I wouldn't have ways to check if you were lying to me? I gave you a chance to tell me the truth, and you almost passed the test. But you forgot to mention that you spent 10 minutes standing outside the library talking to your history TA before you left." I stared at her, a sudden, terrifying realization washing over me like a bucket of ice water. The woman standing in front of me wasn't just a strict, stressed-out girlfriend. She was deeply, dangerously unstable, and she was using her position of authority within the university to actively spy on me, tracking my movements like a prisoner. For the first time since that rainy afternoon in her office, the fog of infatuation completely cleared, and I realized with absolute certainty that I was in a nightmare of my own making, and I had absolutely no idea how to get out. The realization that Victoria was actively tracking my movements through the university's database changed everything. It felt like a sudden, violent shift in reality, like the walls of a room suddenly closing in on me until there was barely enough air left to breathe. I stood there in her kitchen, staring at the digital log of my student ID card on her laptop screen, feeling a cold, hollow sensation spreading through my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers. I wanted to turn around, walk out that door, and never look back. But looking at her, seeing the calm, almost detached expression on her face as she took another sip of her drink, I realized how incredibly dangerous my situation actually was. She held every single card in her hand. My grades, my scholarship, my reputation, my entire future. She could destroy it all with a single email to the dean. "You're tracking me," I whispered, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "Victoria, this is insane. You're using school resources to spy on me? Why would you do that?" She closed the laptop with a soft, deliberate click, her expression softening instantly into that terrifyingly sweet, nurturing look she used whenever she wanted to pull me back in. She walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my waist and resting her head against my chest, acting as if she hadn't just revealed herself to be a total stalker. "I'm not spying on you, Liam," she murmured, her voice muffled against my shirt. "I'm protecting us. You have to understand how terrified I am every single day. The university is looking for any excuse to deny me tenure, and if anyone finds out about what we have, they won't just fire me. They'll ruin my life. When you don't answer your phone, my mind goes to the worst possible places. I start thinking you've told someone, or that you're getting careless. I only checked the logs because I was worried something had happened to you. I love you so much, and the thought of losing you just drives me completely crazy." That was her favorite phrase. "It drives me completely crazy." She used love like a weapon, wrapping it around my neck like a noose and pulling it tight whenever I tried to express a single boundary. And the worst part was, it worked. Standing there in her warm house, listening to her cry and tell me how much she needed me, my 19-year-old brain started to rationalize her behavior again. I told myself that she was just under an immense amount of pressure, that academia was a cutthroat world, and that her paranoia was just a byproduct of how much she cared about me. I kissed the top of her head, apologized for forgetting my phone, and spent the rest of the night comforting her, completely burying the survival instincts that were screaming at me to run. When winter break finally arrived in mid-December, I thought I would get a temporary reprieve. The campus emptied out, and I was scheduled to take a Greyhound bus back to my hometown in Ohio for 3 weeks to spend the holidays with my family. I was genuinely looking forward to it, desperate for a change of scenery and a chance to sleep in my own bed without checking my watch every 5 minutes to make sure I wasn't late for a check-in. But Victoria had other plans. The night before my bus was scheduled to leave, she invited me over for a farewell dinner. When I walked into the house, she had cooked an elaborate meal, opened another expensive bottle of wine, and seemed to be in the best mood I had seen her in weeks. We ate, we laughed, and for a few hours, it felt like the early days of our relationship again. But as we were cleaning up the dishes in the kitchen, she casually reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small, metallic object, sliding it across the counter toward me. It was a brand new iPhone, still sealed in its original plastic packaging. "What's this?" I asked, looking down at it, a familiar knot starting to form in my stomach. "It's an early Christmas present," she said, smiling brightly as she leaned against the counter. "I noticed your old phone has a cracked screen and the battery dies all the time. I bought this for you, and I already set it up on a private family plan under my name. It has unlimited data, the best camera, everything. That way, we don't have to worry about long-distance fees or spotty service while you're back in Ohio." I stared at the box, feeling a wave of intense anxiety. A phone under her name meant she had complete access to the billing records, the data usage, and most importantly, the location services. It wasn't a gift, It was an ankle monitor disguised as a luxury smartphone. "Victoria, this is incredibly generous," I said, trying to choose my words with extreme caution. "But I can't accept this. My parents would ask too many questions if I suddenly show up with a brand new $1,000 phone. They know I can't afford this, and they'll want to know where it came from." Her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, hard line. The atmosphere in the kitchen turned freezing in a matter of seconds. "You can just tell them you saved up from your work-study job, Liam. It's not that complicated. Unless, of course, you don't want to use it because there's something you're trying to hide from me while you're away." "There's nothing to hide," I said quickly, hating how defensive I sounded. "I just think it's too much." "Take the phone, Liam," she said, her voice dropping an octave, completely devoid of warmth. "I spent a lot of money on it, and I expect you to use it. In fact, I want you to leave your old phone here with me. That way, there's no confusion, and you won't be tempted to use your old number to text people you shouldn't be texting." The sheer absurdity of the demand hit me like a physical blow. She wanted me to leave my actual phone behind, cutting off my old number entirely, and take a tracked phone that she controlled completely. But looking into her eyes, I saw an unhinged determination that terrified me. I knew that if I refused, she would make sure I failed her course, which would effectively end my time at Oak Ridge. I was entirely backed into a corner. So, like a coward, I nodded, unsealed the box, transferred my essential contacts, and handed my old phone over to her.